Hey, this is Kirk.
This is Byrd. It's the Kirk and Byrd Show. Welcome to our episode on rowing. We are fortunate to have with us today Coach Jeff Lucier, and we have Senior Caitlin Reardon of the Colgan High School rowing team. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having us.
Hey, I just want to tell everybody out there, it's rowing. Learn something new, okay? This is a very interesting sport. We're going to talk about the basics, but we're also going to talk and get into details. All of our social media is going to flash on the screen. But if you'll just take a quick second, look up the Kirk and Byrd Show on YouTube and hit subscribe, click the bell. We only put out 2 or 3 videos a week, so you're not going to get pounded with that. But, we got a lot of football, a lot of basketball. We're going to be doing some spring sports now, and rowing is a spring sport. So we ask that you do that. So to segue into that, Coach Lucier, why don't you start out with a sport that up here with the rivers in different parts of the country is extremely popular, and talk to us about your school, rowing in general, and then let's get into the rowing scene in high school up here and beyond into college and those things.
So I currently am the boys head coach at Colgan, and Caitlin's one of our girls captains. And so right off the bat, crew is kind of considered a co-ed sport, although it has boys, like a boys side and a girls side, but most teams tend to operate as one unit because most teams in this area they have to buy their own equipment. The school systems, for the most part, don't pay for that. They may, pay for coaches' salaries and things like that, but for the most part, the team kind of operates as a unit to kind of make sure that it has everything it needs. In this area, we have a lot of different teams, a lot of different sizes of teams. Here in Prince William, we have some schools like Potomac, which has 2 rowers. They both row in single. We see them every day coming out there. And then we are the biggest team in Prince William, and we have 90 total kids with 51 of them being girls. And so, and everything in between. Locally, rowing is a huge sport. When I first started in the 80s, we had about 7 teams. Now there are easily over 50 teams in Northern Virginia alone, if you include DC and Maryland, and just the DMV area. And it seems like every year there's new teams. Recently, Battlefield started. They're in their 2nd year. There are a handful of schools in Loudoun County that have started. And then, of course, you have schools like I went to Washington Lee. We're one of the oldest teams in the area. They were founded in 1949. So you have a big stretch of change. And a lot of it has to do with just as high schools are added to Northern Virginia and you say, hey, they have a team. Why can't we have a team? Locally, you'll see schools in all counties around here. So Arlington, Alexandria, Fairfax, Loudoun, Prince William. And then with like the Tidewater area has a bunch of teams. There are teams in Richmond, teams outside of Charlottesville. So they kind of run all over it's slowly growing. The biggest issue you have to have is a place to row. That is the biggest, that's the one limitation. So if you're not near a body of water that you can row on, and not all bodies of water are rowable, it makes it difficult. So around here, most teams either row on the Occoquan Reservoir or they row on the Potomac. And there are a handful of DC, Maryland schools that row on the Anacostia.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, that is where all these teams practice. So unlike other sports, we have to share our practice space. So it's like being out on the Beltway in the afternoon because there are about 14 teams that row out of Fairfax that are in Occoquan. All the Prince William schools row out of they row on the Occoquan. George Mason University is on the Occoquan. Yeah, it is pretty crowded out there. But the cool thing about our sport is that we have a variety of sizes, variety of boat classes, and as a result, you see the difference, and you can see it here in Prince William County, just at our boathouse, which is in Lake Ridge Marina.
Coach, it's with the varying size of teams. If we, if Colgan has one of the largest at 91, and you may have a smaller one like Potomac, how is the sanction? I know you, when I talked to you before, you were telling me a little bit about on the college level, you'll have varsity and then you have club teams. Are all of the teams you're noting, are they varsity, and is it sanctioned by the VHSL? What type of championships can you win?
So we were under what's called VASRA, the Virginia, I'm trying to remember, Virginia Scholastic Rowing Association. It's changed names so many times. I still remember when it was the Northern Virginia Scholastic Rowing Association. And essentially within that organization, we agreed to follow their rules. One of the things that we do is we follow VHSL, even though we are not sanctioned by VHSL, but we follow their rules. So kids have to be eligible like every other sport. In terms of varsity and club status, different counties do it differently. So like Prince William, we are kind of like, we're technically a club, but we have varsity status within the school. So like kids get varsity letters. But like in Fairfax does something similar. I know Arlington and Alexandria, they're full varsity, but they still teams have to pay for their own equipment. And Loudon, I think it's all club, and it's a little different. So, but we all race each other regardless of what status you are. And we all play by the same set of rules, which our organization requires us to do. And the biggest one is that you have to be eligible to participate. You have to, you can't row year round, which is common outside of our state. And, just abide by all the Virginia high school, even things like we can't compete on Sundays unless we get a waiver.
Okay.
So, I mean, just little things that other states don't really deal with. Right. But yeah, we deal with VHSL, even though we're not VHSL.
Sure.
Okay.
Why don't, and both of you can chime in on this, but for people watching this, why don't you give us just the basics on rowing, sculling versus rowing? Before we started recording, I had them backwards, but you guys can do a duo tandem on the basics of rowing and maybe take that into what's important athletically as far as endurance and your legs, which a lot of people wouldn't realize. So let's talk about rowing and sculling.
Caitlin, what would you like to talk about?
So there are lots of different like boat sizes. The biggest boat you're going to get in is an 8. And then we have a 4 and we have a pair. And then that's sweeping. Let me go back to the basics. There's sweeping and sculling. Mm-hmm. And sweeping is with 1 oar and sculling is with 2 oars. So if you're going to scull, you can row in a single, you can row in a double, which is with 1 other person, or you can row in a quad, which is with 4 people and no coxswain. And then the coxswain is the person that sits at the front of the boat with the microphone and tells you what to do, essentially. So at Colgan, we row in 8s in the spring. But then for sweeping, you can row in a pair, which is 2 people, a 4, obviously, which is 4, or an 8. And so normally during your fall season, that's when you can row in smaller boats. And then the spring, we race 8s.
Yeah, one of the things, like a lot of times a team will kind of gravitate towards certain boat classes based on the size of their team. So like Hilton, for example, is a team that is, I don't know what their exact numbers, but they're probably like 20, 30 kids total. And so they do mostly sculling. That's kind of what and a lot of the sculling teams are smaller programs. So it gives them an opportunity to be competitive. Whereas, we have so many kids, we do nothing but 8s. I mean, we own a couple of 4s, but we don't really race in them. Or if they do, it's not our priority. And so if you went to a regatta, you would notice that certain teams tend to go to different events, and so we all tend to race the same group. So within Prince William right now, Woodbridge and Colgan are mostly 8 programs. Forest Park, their boys are 8s, but their girls are 4s. And some teams have both equipment. We don't own any sculling equipment. Now, in terms of what we look for in terms of rowers, attitude, like good attitude, coachability. It's an endurance sport that requires strength. So having a good aerobic, lung capacity is is vital to success. Leg strength is the predominant muscle group that we use, although it's a full body workout. When we coach, we are instructing the rowers to maximize their leg strength when they're pulling on the oar. And so it's really leg dominant, but you do use your upper body. And we're also looking to get them to match up. So in an 8, you want all 8 rowers in sync. their blades in the water at the same time, blades coming out of the water,
Mhm.
bouncing about it. Because so if you look at a boat will kind of go like this if it rows really bad,
Mhm.
and you want it to be nice and flat, nice and what's called level or keel. And so as a coach, you're trying to get them to match up, and you're trying to get the people who work best as a group.
Hmm.
Coach, I have a question for you. So, when you're looking at these athletes, I know you mentioned before that the attitude and the person being able to work and be great on the team, is very important. And you mentioned leg strength. Well, what makes what has Caitlin done to? And then for those who don't know, Caitlin will be rowing in college for Rhode Island University.
Yeah,
Of Rhode Island,
repping.
the URI Rams. They're going to have to. She'll be competing against teams in the Atlantic 10 and in the Eastern region of the country, upper Northeast Atlantic area. But Coach, tell us what makes Caitlin special. And then the question I always wonder is, I go back to asking about VHSL sanctioning and oversight. Do you all have awards, recognition? Like, do you have an all district, all region, all state? And how do you determine that if there's a boat of 8 people? Is it always a team recognition, or do you actually have individuals?
So actually, the only recognition that we have outside of individuals who are recruited to compete in college, or we have a junior national team that we've had a variety of people from the DC area who've participated in it over the years. Only the Washington Post All-Met recognizes. No one else, no other organization. We don't have a district or a region like the other sports do. VASRA does not do anything individually. Part of the problem is it's really hard to name individuals. Although as coaches, we all know who our top kids are. I mean, usually those kids tend to gravitate toward our fall programs and summer programs that are not part of Colgan or any of the high schools, but a lot of our rowers do. And so, usually it tends to be, we have a thing called an ERG score. So if you've ever been on a rowing machine, and they've become very popular at gyms, if you want to see how you stack up against a rower, set the machine for 2,000 meters and see how long it takes you to do it.
Actually,
Generally speaking, like the world record for men is sub 6 minutes, easily like high 5 minutes. However, at the high school level, what we're looking for, the top varsity boys are under 7 minutes. They're usually like in the 6:30 to 6:50 range, depending on how much training you do on the erg. With girls, I think it's sub 8. You want to be in the 7.
Yeah, we want most of our girls to be sub 8. Right now, most of our boat is sub 8.
So that's a way that you can measure yourself up
740.
against. Oh, I'm sorry.
That is very interesting. I did not know that. And when I go to the gym, I'll get on that rowing. I used to love it, but it is work. It is work. But Caitlin, I'm gonna have to challenge you. I'm gonna have to meet you up at Colgan, and we're gonna go for it.
You may not want to do that. You may.
No, I'm gonna.
You're meeting me in my zone, man. I don't know.
I'm gonna train Caitlin for like years when you get a little age on you, because right now you'll blow me away. No, I'm not going to tell you what I get, but I'm going to try that.
Go for it.
Your test is a good gauge of both aerobic and strength, and it's hard. It's one of the hardest things that we ask rowers to do because it's completely individual. It's not the ultimate test to see how well you move a boat, because like I have guys who are currently rowing for me that their erg scores are really, they're okay, but they're not as good as someone I've had in the past. But they row technically on the water better, and they row with the group. And that's ultimately the goal, is to try to, you kind of start with an erg score, but then you kind of ultimately, who makes the boat is based on the technique that they have out in the water.
Right.
Yeah, cool. We have this, we have a phrase, it's ergs don't float. Like your erg score can be super fast and you can be super fast, but if you get on the water and you're not coachable and you don't row well with other people and you're really arrogant and your technique sucks, then you're not going to make the boat that you want.
So Kirk kind of wouldn't do well. Kirk wouldn't do well in this, right?
I don't know.
Kirk's going to be the guy with the great attitude. I'm going to be the guy with the great score to get in there. But just a message.
all these sports, when you get older, you realize it's so core oriented. I mean, I played tennis and serving and hitting overheads. I can't hit an overhead now. When I was younger, I had these tight abs and all those things. But one of the things I want to ask you is, let's talk about the popularity. Because when I moved here 30 years ago, you go across, the Potomac River and Key Bridge, and you see, at daylight, you see people rowing. So this sport's been around a long time. It's established. It may not be football or basketball, but let's start with the popularity around here, like the teams that, Colgan has 90 rowers. And then we know that there's been teams like Coach Washington Lee, Washington Jefferson has been doing it for a very long time. George Mason has a team. So like, what are the top programs? And then when you get into college, what are the top programs? And then Coach, I think you said as you get further northeast, it gets more popular, because one of the big reasons in this country that the big cities are where they are is because they were accessible by water. So there's lots of, rowing in the Philadelphia area, I assume. New York's got a lot of water. Hampton Roads has got a ton. So tell us about like the programs around here. Virginia, when they do that all Met team, what are some of the programs that are up there?
Do you want me to speak on this, Caitlin? And then you can talk about
it. I don't know much about like the specifics, so I've been
So
running for that long.
This area has grown a lot. Actually, a lot of the Maryland, DC schools, they're a little bit faster currently than the Virginia schools, because they can row year round. And that's like a big component of it. But I would say that generally speaking, rowing has gotten more popular for a variety of reasons. One, most teams around that, most rowing teams are no cut teams. There are only a handful that I'm aware of that actually have a limit on the size of their team. And so as a result, you have a lot of kids on the team. I've been on teams bigger than Colgan before I came. My previous coaching, I was at Thomas Jefferson, and I had over 70 boys in my last year there. And so it's a popular sport because, like certain other sports that don't do cuts, it's like, oh, I can join the team. Mm-hmm. And we all and we have different groups within the team. So clearly they're all not going to be in the varsity. So like on the girls team, for example, there's not all 51 of them are going to be in the varsity boat. And so it's popular that way. It's become very popular for girls because of Title IX. When Title IX really started being enforced at the collegiate level, colleges realized that their numbers are out of whack. And so they're like, we have a big football team. The only really women's sport that can come close to balancing number-wise is a rowing program. And so what you are starting to see is that more colleges that have big football programs are also now having at least fully funded rowing programs. They're not always the most competitive, but at least they have the program, and they have walk-on programs. And so it's growing because you're seeing it, like the big push is, oh, join girls rowing because you can get a scholarship. Mm-hmm. You don't hear that on the boys side as much because there's not as much scholarship money out there. And unfortunately, the Ivy Leagues are really good in men's rowing, and they don't give athletic scholarships. So
need to.
That's 8 schools right there, right off the bat, that don't give scholarships. And the Naval Academy is another one. And technically they give scholarships because you don't have to pay to go there. Right. But it's a different world. Navy sports is a different world than anything else. Absolutely. And so I would say that's a big reason why it's become so popular. And the other one is, my experience has been a lot of people who come out to do crew are people who are burned out from other sports, or they've never had another sport that they felt that they did well in, or they have injuries that prevent them from doing other sports. And so since rowing is a no impact sport, I've had a lot of guys who they did basketball, they did football, they did baseball, you name soccer, but for whatever reason, they got hurt, they got burned out. They're looking for something new. And that's generally why a big bulk of the kids who come out for our sport, they're looking for something new. And also you start in 9th grade for the most part. So we all know that in basketball, you could be playing all year, like since you're 5 years old, but if you don't have a certain level of talent, there's no way you're making a high school team. Right. And so rowing, a lot of kids see, everyone starts at pretty much in 9th grade. Mm-hmm. And so there's more of a chance to make it. Now, granted, it still takes a lot of effort to make the top boat, but it doesn't take as much effort just to be on the team. And so that's a big reason why our sport has grown, because the schools, hey, we see our neighborhood school do it. I mean, so to kind of give a very brief history lesson, Washington Lee, which is now Washington Liberty, the only reason they started a rowing program was because what is now Alexander High School, which was then I think GW High School, back, they had a team, and the two schools were arch rivals in every sport. And they're like, we want to have a team so we can race against them and beat them in another sport. That is the only reason why my high school started.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, my coach was the founding coach, so he was there for 40 years. So we know all these stories.
Speaking of that, Coach, let's transition just a bit. Let's find out a little bit more about you all. Coach, can you tell us how you got into the sport with the coach that coached at WNL for over 40 years? How did he find you? Did you find him? And then we'll do the same thing with you, Caitlin, after we hear about Coach. And tell us, I know that you actually were in a different position in terms of what Caitlin is. I believe you were a coxswain. So tell us how you got into the sport, and then you excelled. You also did it in college, George Mason. And so let's let our audience know about your story.
I was clueless about the sport. My older brother's best friend was a varsity rower. And he said, because I was a coxswain, so I was smaller, I was loud, I was bossy. And so he came up to me one day in 8th grade and said, you make a good coxswain. I had no idea what he was talking about. So he brought me down to a fall practice in the fall. It was called Potomac Boat Club. And I figured out how to steer pretty quickly. And next year as a freshman, I came out. But it was someone else told me, you would be good at this sport. And so I showed up, and I've had a very successful career through high school and college, and did a few years in the club level, and then now I've been coaching. But yeah, it was just someone told me to do it, and I was like, okay.
Coach, what type of boats have coxswain? I would assume the 8.
The coxswain?
Coxswain.
So
with what size?
So all 8s do, because an 8 needs so the coxswain is the person who steers. They also are like a horse jockey. So they're kind of getting the rowers to row, and they also have to kind of call out the race plan, because in our sport, coaches are not allowed to communicate with their boats when they're racing. We cannot say anything to them. We cannot communicate with them. And so coxswains are they're in charge. So that's why they have to be it's a leadership position. They have to be bossy. They have to be able to take command. But all 8s have them. There are both coxed 4s and uncoxed 4s, but at the high school level, we don't really see what's called a coxless 4. You see it at the Olympic level, and then you can have a cox pair. It's not very common, but they do exist. But it's really just the 8s. It's just the 8s. That's the main, and the 4s at the high school level.
So Rusty was actually right. It's coxswain, not coxswain.
Correct.
Sorry, Rusty.
It's spelled coxswain, but it's pronounced coxswain.
Okay. Quick. Okay, so if they're just 2 people in a boat, how do they know where they're going?
You have to turn around.
Yeah, you have literally. It's like you have to check your shoulder.
Okay, all right. I mean,
and they have lane lines. They have buoys, so they have lane lines.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So, like, if you watch the Olympics, all the coxless boats, whoever is sitting in what's called the bow seat, which would be the seat in for there's bow, stern, port, starboard, but in a boat, I mean, for people it's like the front of the boat. They figure out a way to steer, and there's actually a little on bigger boats, they actually have a rudder that's attached to the foot plate, so of your shoe that you're sitting, so you're tied in the boat, and the coxless boats that are really, they actually have a steering cable attached to that, and that person steers.
The coxswain.
No, the rower does.
The rower does.
In a coxless boat, yeah. So you have to pick someone who can do, so they have to row and steer at the same time. It's a little hard.
Very difficult.
Yeah, it's not the easiest skill to do.
Right.
Okay,
so go ahead.
Let's hear about you, Caitlin. How did you get into the sport? What do you do? What is your position, I guess? And then what made you, Coach, I guess we'll have you actually probably point this out a little bit more, but what made her one of the best around here and to be able to go do this in college? But start out, Caitlin, tell us how you guys started.
I've played like every sport in the book. I've been playing sports since I was very, very small. I started with, I grew up skiing actually. I was born in Utah. So I grew up skiing, playing soccer. I danced for a couple of years, but mainly soccer and volleyball. I played volleyball for a long time. So the thing that kind of got me into rowing, I moved to Virginia from Hawaii 3 years ago, I think. And when I was in Hawaii, I did a sport. It's called outrigger paddling. It's in a boat with a paddle. And so when I moved here, I was just kind of like, oh, they're both on the water. Like, I'll give rowing a shot. And so I started training. And then within like 2 weeks, the varsity coach was like, oh, she's tall. Like, let's see what she can do. And so I started training with them and I kind of picked it up and I really fell in love with it.
How tall are you, Caitlin?
I'm like a little bit taller than 5'10".
Okay. So,
So
length is important.
I was gonna say, yeah, I guess it makes sense.
There's
yeah.
a benefit, yeah. I have very long arms and it definitely has proven an advantage.
Rusty, you don't want to row against her, by the way.
I'm a tall 5'7".
Yeah. So one of the things I actually wanted to go back for Title IX to even things out. Now, a lot of people don't realize this, but in college baseball, whether it's George Mason or the biggest programs in the country, UVA, Florida, the baseball powerhouses, they still have the same number of scholarships. And I believe it's 11. I'm guessing on that. I could have looked it up. But what is it like for both of you for the recruiting? Are there full rides or are they taking like, say, let's just say, I don't know what the number is, but do you know what the number is? Either of you?
Yes,
Number
I know what the
is
number
Coach?
is.
Go ahead.
Please share with me.
So if a school chooses to do the max, it's 20 scholarships. Yes.
Man,
but
that's a lot of money.
Yeah, but not every school gives the full 20. And what some schools will do, they'll do like 10, maybe they'll do a bunch of half scholarships.
Yeah.
If it's a state school, the big one is that they'll say you can get in-state tuition, even though you're an out-of-state person. So that doesn't count as a scholarship. And so, but yeah, the max is 20 for women. Men has no limit because it's not NCAA. They have their own championships and all. They follow NCAA rules. And schools that are NCAA teams, obviously they have to follow. But their championship is kind of run. It happened like over 100 years ago when they started. So they have not been put into the NCAA, whereas the women have. And when the women's rowing went into the NCAA, they changed a lot of how the sport is. One of them is in men's rowing, the champion is whoever wins the varsity 8. That is the champion, no matter what the rest of the team does. For women, it's a team championship. So you have to do well in the varsity 8, the second varsity 8, and the varsity 4. And so there's a different way of coaching, a different way of placing your athletes in boat classes, because it's not about trying to make your first boat the fastest always. It's about making all 3 boats fast enough to qualify for the NCAA.
Right.
And so the coaches who realize I need to recruit for quantity and quality, they're the ones that figured it out. And they were the ones who have been the most successful.
Okay. On the collegiate level, where are those stronger programs now for the women's? Is this a coast-driven sport, so on the east or the west coast? What about the central part of the country? Because you can do it on rivers, but is that something that's done? I know Wisconsin has a strong program, but I don't know what the body of water is out there.
So the defending national champion is Texas.
And
Michigan is the defending Big Ten champion, and Ohio State was like a 3-time national champion. Stanford's fast. Yeah. Washington's fast. On the East Coast, you have like UVA was fast, although they're kind of having a down year this year. And of the Ivy Leagues, it's usually Yale or Princeton. But it's kind of funny because a lot of it is like schools like Alabama suddenly got good in rowing, although they're not at the same level as schools.
They have so much money from football. They're just
Exactly.
Yeah.
They built a whole new boathouse for the women with all that money.
Sure. Yeah.
But so it seems to be certain conferences are a little stronger. And I would say like the Big Ten's pretty fast. The Pac-10, was it the Pac-12? They're pretty fast. In Texas, they're fast. I mean, they won a national championship.
Wow. And this is such an education because I was gonna guess the Northeast.
No, actually, a lot
like the Ivies and the Bucknells, and
when Title IX kicked in, the Ivy League suddenly fell behind on the women's
Right.
side because they just couldn't compete with the scholarships.
Mhm.
And so now you do have like Division III is dominated by the Northeast. Like
Right.
all the D3 schools, they're predominantly Northeastern schools.
Right.
But yeah, it's funny, the shift of power happened pretty quickly.
So
Wow.
what would you say are the top 5 programs, boys and girls, in the All-Met Washington Post area? And then
Do you want
maybe
me
you can put on it. Let's start around here.
Like just Virginia schools or just all schools put together?
DC Metro, Virginia, DC Metro. Yeah.
So the top school right now, I think, is Woodrow Wilson's pretty fast. On the men's side, they're like the defending national champions.
That's the public school in DC.
Yes,
Wow.
they are
Yeah.
really fast.
Okay.
Trying to think of Bethesda Chevy Chase. It's pretty
Mhm.
fast.
Yep.
BC.
St. Alban / National Cathedral. They're
Yep.
pretty fast.
Okay.
And then McLean's pretty fast as well. They're in our league. They're the fastest team in our league when you look at both boys and girls.
Okay.
And Yorktown's been pretty quick. And Wakefield, actually Wakefield's come on pretty quickly the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
Within Prince William, Colgan's the fastest. And I think Stonebridge is the fastest. Loudoun County School, maybe Riverside. They're a newer program.
Yeah, Riverside's very right.
So-
down the street.
So that's the metro area, but where does Colgan rate in the state?
I mean, right now the boys are top 6.
I think
I
the
think
women are top 6 too. After
The
this
top
weekend.
6 or top 8. But yeah,
Yeah.
we're doing pretty well. And there's the difference between 3 and 6 is pretty close.
Right.
Mhm.
I mean, we're pretty tightly bunched at this stage in the season.
Yeah, definitely.
I would also think that Northern Virginia is at the top as opposed to Richmond and Hampton Roads. Maybe I'm wrong.
Depends on the boat class. So for 8s, that's Northern Virginia dominant. Sculling events, actually that's Charlottesville. You have
Okay,
two,
yeah.
Albemarle and Western Albemarle are really quick in sculling events. And
Yeah.
then the Tidewater schools, a lot of them, they're kind of like how Prince William is. You have some schools that do 4, some that do sculling, and they will send their best boats up to the state championship in mid-May.
Yeah.
But they generally don't send their entire teams. I mean,
About any of our Hampton Roads teams.
yeah, so like Great Bridge is one of the faster.
Okay.
They're pretty quick. And I'm trying to think. Matthews has had a history of being fast, although they're a really tiny little single A school.
Yeah, they're real small. Okay.
But they have had success. They've actually been very fast over the years.
Okay.
So,
I
so
don't know the
before-
history of the area. I've been rowing for like 2 years, so this is all news to me as well.
So we're gonna, before we wrap this up, I do have a couple of questions. So Colgan High School is this is their 6 years, 6th year in existence. What is the highest championship or trophy or award you guys have won? Whether it was an individual or smaller a 2-boat or 8, like what did you go to a tournament or in state level or national? What is the highest recognition that you all have received?
Do you know the history, Caitlin?
Or won?
Let me try. I know that the top varsity women's 8 went to nationals. Like, was it 3 years ago?
It was 2019.
Yeah. So I know they went to nationals. They placed at states. Because don't you have to be top 5 or 6 in the state? If you're
top
6, you can argue your way into nationals, from what I understand.
It's top 3 now. Top 3, but it's top. You have to medal at states to go to nationals.
Okay. Other than that, I really don't know much.
So Colgan has had actually a pretty unique history because it started with 4 girls who were all like they were non-freshmen who were rowing at other school, like at Woodbridge, I think Hilton, maybe Forest Park. And when they got to Colgan, they're like, we want to keep rowing, but Colgan didn't have a team. So they kind of rowed as kind of like a team on their own, and sculling boat. So actually Colgan girls started as a sculling program with 4 girls. And yeah, and so that little group they actually went to nationals. I think they may have medaled in like the quad at nationals. But then as soon as the team got really big, we did away with all the sculling equipment and we focused on the 8s. And the 8 that Caitlin was talking about is widely considered to be our best boat that we've ever produced, because it was 9 girls. They finished 3rd at state and they qualified for nationals. And I know they didn't make it to the finals, but they at least advanced out.
Yeah.
They raced twice, which means that they had to beat someone to get into the next round.
Real quick, how does Colgan look for boys and girls to get in that top 3 and go to nationals?
It's going to be tight. I have a good group of guys who are really
you got
hungry.
a chance. You got a chance. I like that.
I think for the women's team, I think that it's very tight right now between all the boats. I know that we have more moves to make before states, so to say. Like, we have a lot more
tweaking.
Yeah, like I know that we're gonna get faster. Like, according to my coach's like training plan, I know that we are. And so I think that it's gonna be a bloodbath the next couple of weeks out on that water.
All right.
It's gonna be close.
All right. What about the boys?
I mean, we're in the mix, but we're on the outside looking in right now. But still, it's a huge improvement over last year. Last year was the boys' first year in the varsity boat. Our association does not require you to row varsity until your 3rd year of existence. And so the girls team is older than the boys team by a few years. So the fact that we are even making finals on regular season regatta, like this past weekend, we finished 2nd, and the guys have consistently finished in the top 3 this whole season. But we keep losing to different teams. So right now we're ranked 6th going into this coming weekend.
So
wow,
you young men on Colgan boys crew, the outside looking in means your coach is saying you're maybe a long shot to make states. Therefore, that's a challenge to you. So now closing things out, I wanted to, I just got 2 questions, Rusty, and then you can take us out. And that is, where are the nationals? Are they a set place or do they go around?
Do you know where they are, Caitlin?
I knew you were going to ask me. See, I wish are they in Philly or are they in New Jersey?
They're in Cherry Hill, New Jersey.
Cherry Hill.
Okay, it was my second
outside
guess.
of Philly. Okay.
And it rotates. There's like about 3 or 4 sites that are used. The Occoquan used to be held. It used to be held on the Occoquan.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But it's been a long time.
Occoquan is a really, really beautiful river.
It is.
For racing.
But the race court, but the park is not really conducive to hold national. The last time it was here, it was back in the 90s.
Right.
So we haven't been used as a national site for some time.
Okay. Now, Caitlin, you're very focused on ending the year, but seniors in high school get senioritis, and my last question, and then Rusty, please, you do your questions and take us out. And we've really enjoyed this. Thank you so much. Is what are you looking forward to the most going to Rhode Island? Not only just sports, but the college experience. I mean, you're going to be, it's Kingston, correct?
Yes, it's in Kingston.
Yeah, I've been through there. I haven't seen the campus.
I've been to the campus.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
All right. So what are you looking forward to the most?
I mean, obviously, like, my number one thing is going to row with the team and train under my coaches there. I'm just like ecstatic about it. I feel really, really privileged and blessed to be able to go row Division I with all these amazing people. I feel like I already have a family there, which is really amazing. I'm going to be a political science major, and I love studying political science, all that kind of stuff. And so I'm really excited to just get there and to get in the swing of things and get really in the training, get in like my training groove, and like, I don't know. Yeah. Like what I said, get in my routine,
Right.
know everyone.
Cool.
Good.
All right. That's great. And so last two questions I have is, Coach, so what about if you don't go, Colgan has a program, but every high school doesn't. So I think you touched on it. So if there's another school, so if a Freedom doesn't have a program, can their athletes play or be on the Colgan team? And
Yes, sir.
good. And then my last part of that is there any type of youth program for this, or really they don't get started until they get to the 9th grade?
So I'll answer your second question first. There is a program at our boathouse called Prince William Crew. It's an umbrella organization that any kid can join. You don't. They run a summer program and a fall program. Actually,
Right.
Caitlin Reardon in our fall program, I coach the competitive boys there.
Right.
And there's no restriction other than you get to practice. And so that's one way that someone can row. And they start as early as 8th grade. They have like 8th grade learn to row programs during the summer, which are pretty popular, and in the fall. Matter of fact, Lake Ridge Middle School has a lot of kids that go into it because they have like they have a
lake.
They have like an erg club. And now, in terms of if someone wants to row from another school, and this would apply to any local high school, there are clubs that are like PWC all over the place. There's some in Fairfax, there's some in DC, and what they will do is that they, depending on the interest, they may be able to run a spring program. So like, for example, every now and then you'll see like an individual rower. Like Osborne Park one year had a girl who rowed in a single. She rowed out, it wasn't PWC, it was called Resilient, which is over on the Fairfax side of the river. But she raced as Osborne Park all year, and she actually medaled at nationals.
Wow.
In the single.
Wow.
She went to Texas on scholarship.
Holy.
But she was just someone who they found, she somehow got connected to the sport and found a way to do it. And a lot of it, I think things kind of worked out, kind of how Colgan started. The 4 girls found someone who would coach them. They were with Resilient as well, because their coach was like, I'm not doing anything in the spring, because spring rowing around here is pretty much a high school driven league. It's not really club, but there are clubs throughout. Actually, outside of this area, most high school, like junior programs, are club programs, and especially like in the Southeast, the Midwest, the West Coast. And so when you go to like the youth nationals, you have some high school teams there, but you have a lot of clubs, and the club will be like PWC, where anyone who wants to row, who can get to practice, can do it. So so if someone from Freedom wanted to try, I would encourage them to come out for a summer program. Or they can do a fall program. And if they can get enough kids to want to be in Potomac has 2 kids. And so they go out every day in a single. They work really hard.
Right.
And there's a boy and a girl on the team, and that's it. But they come out every single day. They work just as hard as the boys and girls at Colgan and Woodbridge and all the other schools.
Right.
Okay.
I do want to say that I have only been rowing. I think this will be my second spring season. And so like if anyone's listening to this and you like need a new sport, literally try it. Like I was just like, let's give it a shot. And I ended up like having a knack for it, and like I fell in love with it, and it's taken me to college, and it's been such a crazy experience.
Yeah.
So, like if anyone's listening, like go try it out. It's like you'll get really strong, and it's such a beautiful sport.
Right. And I was like, okay, I said I was finished, but I'm like, this is flooding my brain, which means I mean, college is expensive now. And, these households that have 3, 4, 5 kids, putting 5 kids through school, sports scholarships. And we know the girls soccer, for women, soccer and softball is just, man, it's really going. And then with the Title IX with rowing, it's a great opportunity, and it opens a lot of doors. And, I would think it builds, a lot of self-esteem. So, like to thank you for coming on, and Caitlin, I will tell you this, and Rusty, I will let you take us out, is that when we have the high school athletes on, we kind of just urge people to spread the word. And we know when the word is spread, when we look at some analytics, and we got a lot of stuff coming from Instagram, because that's the young people's platform. So when we have a high number of sources from Instagram, so we'll put this on Instagram, and we'll also put it on our other platforms. And, thank you. This has been fun talking about this, and we want to watch you and see states, nationals, and Rusty, I'll give you the opportunity to take us out. Thank you very much, Coach and Caitlin.
So, Coach, we're going to promote some of the things you talked about today, Coach, not just your school, but some of the other programs. We'll put that in here. But the last thing, I always like to know something personal about you guys. So this is how we're going to close it out. Tell us something, anything that has been a unique or cool experience that rowing has brought to your life. So did it take you somewhere you never would have gone? Did you meet somebody you never would have met? Or you just had fun because you rowed in this event? Coach, I know you've done this for a long time. I know you've been
Coach, you go first.
I gotta think.
You've been around Olympians. You've done a lot. It's like, has this taken you somewhere you looked around and go, wow, if I hadn't done rowing, brought me here?
I mean, it didn't take me to my career, which I'm a teacher at Colgan, but I've met a lot of really great people who have had also very successful careers themselves. Right. And the thing that's been a common denominator amongst both my high school and college teammates, I didn't really hang out with my club teammates as much, is that they all were driven and they're very successful, and they have all been successful in a variety of different fields.
Right.
And so for me personally, it's just kind of cool knowing a lot of guys who have such a variety of backgrounds as professionals now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's cool. Caitlin?
I think my answer, honestly, like right now, it's like very surreal that I get to go do what I love in college. And so it's kind of like, I'm looking around and it's like, whoa, like rowing got me like URI was my top school, and like the coaches there are amazing. And I'm just like kind of in awe that I've met so many wonderful, like so many really powerful and driven women that I admire a lot. Like even through my recruiting process, I met a lot of different coaches, and I just met so many people that are like so inspirational to me. And the rowing world is very small. So once you get to know everyone, it's very crazy to me, very surreal.
Worked out well for you.
It really did.
That is great. So look, I appreciate you all being on the show. This was great. Look, any way we can help you all out, come back to the show. Anything we can help you promote. But you all are, like, this brought, even though I know we've talked to you before, like I'm learning more even this time. So I know you're going to open eyes for a lot of people. Coach, I hope it helps you as a recruiting tool, but not just for athletes at your school, but for other schools. I know you want more competition. You want kids from all the schools that now that they know, hey, I can do, one or two, or if we can get 4 people to just increase the amount here in Northern Virginia. I think this has been awesome. So thank you again for joining us. Look, out there, all of our Kirk and Byrd fans, hey, give these folks love. Like, comment on this show. Tell us what you know about rowing that we didn't mention, because we'll put out a show. We think we've covered everything and say, oh, somebody say, oh, well, you didn't mention this, and I'm like, oh, okay, well, good. Yeah, we love that. So this has been awesome. I just want to thank you guys again, and good luck to you, Caitlin, with this season in college, and both of you for this season. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
I always want to get this in. Subscribe to us on YouTube. And then if you want our other platforms to listen to us, just Google the Kirk and Byrd Show. And this is our 70th episode. So there's a lot of cool stuff. We're not one-trick ponies. We do a lot of different things. We're going to have some athletes on here from lacrosse, softball, baseball, We got some great things coming. We have a lot of fun doing this. We want to do some other things, maybe some equestrian, archery, some of those things that, that are popular. But thank you very much. We appreciate you taking the time. And Rusty.
The Kirk and Byrd Show is out.